Welcome to the Natural Super Kids podcast, where you will discover practical strategies to inspire you to boost the health and nutrition of your kids. I'm Jessica Donovan, a qualified naturopath specialising in kids' health, and I want to make it as easy as possible for you to raise healthy and happy kids. Let's get into it. Hello, welcome to the Natural Super Kids podcast. Jessica Donovan here. So today I am speaking to Jacqui Ward, who is a psychologist. We're talking about supporting sensitive kids, highly sensitive kids to thrive. And we've done some sort of podcasts with guests in the parenting space, in the mental health and emotional needs space over the last couple of weeks. So we've been talking about supporting kids with ADHD. We've been talking about connected parenting. And today, as I said, we're talking about supporting highly sensitive kids. I would love to hear from you and know if these types of topics are something you want to see more of on the Natural Super Kids podcast. I personally love having these conversations with experts, parenting experts and experts that are focused on supporting our kids emotionally and supporting their mental health. So I'd love to hear from you if you want to hear more from experts like we've had on over the last couple of weeks. Send me a message over on Instagram, Natural Super Kids on Instagram, or you can email me, jessica@naturalsuperkids.com. Let me know if this is something you want to hear more of on the podcast. And also if you have any suggestions for guests that you would love to hear on the Natural Super Kids podcast. I'm always open to suggestions on topics that you guys are enjoying on the podcast. So on to this week's podcast. As I said, I am joined by the amazing Jacqui Ward. And look, I make a lot of these connections for the people that I speak to. I see their Instagram content or I hear them on other people's podcasts and really resonate with, what they're saying. And so reach out and get them onto the podcast. And that was the case with Jacqui. So Jacqui's a registered psychologist. She has a deep passion for supporting children and their families. She's committed to a trauma-informed neurodivergence affirming approach, creating a safe and supportive space where all children feel seen, understood and valued. And Jacqui supports children navigating anxiety, ADHD, autism, emotional dysregulation, depression, and challenging behaviours. And one of her specialties, as we're going to be talking about today, is supporting those highly sensitive kids. So in this conversation, we talk about exactly what that looks like. What are the traits of highly sensitive kids, and lots of practical ideas on how we can support our highly sensitive kids. And also we go back to us, the importance of supporting ourselves, because parenting highly sensitive kids, is a lot. It can be quite tricky. Now, if this topic interests you, I also want to let you know about an episode we did previously, episode 150 of the Natural Super Kids podcast, all about the science of sensitive kids. And we talked about this concept of dandelion and orchid children. I think it's such a it's such a good analogy. And I talk more about that in podcast number 150. I'll make sure the link is in the show notes. I won't say more about that, but it's a really interesting concept, particularly if you are parenting a highly sensitive child, which after listening to Jacqui share her wisdom today, you will, if you don't already, you will have a very clear idea of whether your child sort of fits into that highly sensitive category. So welcome to the podcast, Jacqui. Hello, Jacqui. Welcome to the Natural Super Kids podcast. It's so good to have you here.
So nice to be here with you, Jess. As we were just saying off air, finally to sit down with you and talk and connect and talk about all the things that we both love, I think is amazing. So thanks for having me.
Yes, I think our audience are going to love this topic. It's going to be so helpful. So we're talking all about highly sensitive kids and how to support them. But before we get into tapping into all of your knowledge in that area, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to be doing the work you do?
Yeah, I'd love to. So, yeah, my name's Jacqui Ward, and I'm a psychologist from here in Sydney, Australia. I work with children, adolescents, and their families predominantly. That's my area of love at work, and I guess I'm really lucky that I get to work across a few unique settings. I'm in private practice, but also work in a hospital school setting as well, where we support kids who can't attend mainstream school due to mental health challenges. So that's a really beautiful space to be in as well. So I guess that's the work side of things. And then personally, I'm also a mum. I have three little ones who are 10, 8, and 5. And how I came to do this work actually is a bit interesting, I guess. Had a career change when I became a mum for the first time. When I left school, I knew I wanted to be a psych, but, you're young and I had a million people telling me different things at that age. And so I ended up studying economics of all things.
Oh, wow.
Worked in corporate for 10 or so years before falling pregnant, and then retrained as a psychologist. Took me 7.5 years of having the babies, but yeah, finally got to that point where now I get to be in my dream job.
Wow. Yeah, what a journey. And to do all that while you had young kids, I can imagine that would have been lots of work.
Lots of work, but also lots of breaks. I had, semesters off each time the bubbies were born. And in the end, it just kind of became like actually a nice thing for me to do at the end of the day when everyone was settled, jump into study. So, yeah.
A break from being a mum.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Awesome. So sensitive kids. So I imagine that anyone listening probably has an inkling that they have a highly sensitive kid. That's what they're tuning into this episode for. But can you tell us some of the traits that kind of tell us that we might have a highly sensitive child?
Yeah, for sure. So I love this topic so much, and welcome to all of your community that are listening. Because, and I hope that this chat today with us might eliminate for some people. The reason I love the topic is because when you understand high sensitivity, it truly is like turning a light bulb on. Or that's what it was like for me as a mum and in my practice as well, because it's something that when we do understand it, it changes everything about the way we see and support our little people and, how we can be with them. So in terms of what a highly sensitive child is, we'll go through some common traits that might have people sort of ticking in their mind. But I just want to preface it by saying that high sensitivity is recognized to be a biological trait. So it is not, some people come and say, oh, it sounds like a nice idea or like a nice soft sort of way to describe. And maybe it is those things, but it also has basis in science as well. And I just want to reinforce that, because I think when I was growing up at that time, that being called sensitive came with a whole lot of connotations and biases and things that really we don't need to have. And now that we understand what it is scientifically, we can support it in that way. So I'll tell you some of the things, Jess, and you can, maybe this will resonate with you or some of your audience. I'm referencing here Dr. Elaine Aron's book. She's like the psychologist that first spoke and researched and talked about high sensitivity as a trait. So she's kind of the guru that we look to when it comes to this. She's got a brilliant questionnaire that you can go through as a parent and kind of look at to ascertain whether you think your child might fit this profile. So some of the things that I think are most resonant, highly sensitive kids feel things deeply and big. And I always say to parents that comes with big overwhelm, but also big joy. They love hard. They, everything's like intensity level 100 usually. They will be incredibly intuitive. So parents often say to me, gosh, it's like they're beyond their years, or it's like they knew what I was thinking or feeling before I even spoke, when I walked into the room. And that's really common. They'll tend to be perfectionists, ask lots of questions. They will be bothered by things that other people don't notice. So, for example, the classic scratchy tag on the school shirt or the seams in the socks, sand on their skin at the beach. This does, present as a fairly common part of being highly sensitive, that sensory overwhelm. They'll typically be bothered by loud noises, busy places, crowded spaces. They tend to perform best, and this is actually one of Dr. Aron's criteria, which says they perform best when strangers aren't present. They don't particularly love being observed or watched in when they're doing things, and they tend to be really content in quiet play or solo time as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
that's just a small
beautiful.
selection of things that might resonate.
Yeah, and when I'm thinking like from a naturopathic point of view, like the kids that we support that get overwhelmed, like that overload, the sensory sort of overload is really common, and even the gut, symptoms where they're sensitive to lots of different foods and environmental factors. So we do find, and I don't know if there's any sort of scientific basis for this, but those kind of emotionally sensitive kids tend to be sort of physically sensitive as well. Have you seen that in your practice?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I can't reference the research right at this moment, but I believe there is definitely that connection there, because it does come with this tendency, I suppose, to have a nervous system that can flick into dysregulation perhaps more quickly or more often than their non-highly sensitive peers.
Yes, definitely. Okay, so what do parents need to understand about their highly sensitive children? Because, I think highly sensitive children can be tricky to parent. And so what is it that you think parents need to understand?
Yeah, without doubt. I love that you've mentioned that. And I think it's so good that we do talk about the fact that parenting highly sensitives can be really demanding. And it can, parents before they necessarily know about this profile can wonder, well, what am I doing wrong? Like, surely no one else seems to be having this amount of difficulty going into the birthday party or, settling into an environment like school, for example. And so it does come with a lot of confusion, I think, for parents, and overwhelm and perhaps guesswork themselves about what they may or may not be doing right. So I just want to reassure everybody about that to start with. So what do I think we need to know? I think we first of all need to understand what high sensitivity is, because when you do, like I said, it changes your whole perception of what your child needs and how you as a parent can best support them. But I guess the biggest takeaway is that high sensitivity is absolutely not a disorder. Like, it's not something we diagnose in the clinic. It's not recognized in mental health diagnoses, because it's a natural subset of being a human. I think the research supports, this, that about, depending on which research, but 15 to 30% of the whole population do possess this trait of high sensitivity. So it's just a way of being in the world.
Yeah, it's nothing we have to cure or solve or get on top of. It's just the way that our kids are. And I guess understanding that is huge for parents.
Yeah, that's exactly it, what you said.
Yeah. And so what can parents do to support their highly sensitive kids when it comes to their emotional needs?
Yeah, this is a really good one. And I guess this is usually the driver of what gets parents to seek support, maybe for in your work, mine, OT, that kind of field as well. I think the biggest thing to recognize when supporting kids who are overstimulated, overwhelmed, and this will be the most common challenge, in all the highly sensitives I speak to, even adults, they identify that as being the most tricky thing to manage for themselves. So I think for kids, it's about, as when we're the parents raising them, educating yourself about what their experience is like, how they can become overwhelmed seemingly so quickly, although there is always a lead up to it, but it can look like it's a 0 to 100 reaction in the moment to us. And then help our kids to understand that too, empower them to be like, all right, I need buffers in my day, white space in my day. When I get home from school, I'm not going to run straight into swimming lessons or footy practice or ballet, whatever it is. I'm going to need an hour to decompress, and I need to do that hanging out by myself or having something to eat or whatever it is. It can be so freeing for everyone when we can just adjust, make little tweaks that make all the difference in terms of how they feel.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I guess, do you see a correlation between highly sensitive kids having highly sensitive parents? Because I think a big struggle would come where the parent maybe isn't, highly sensitive, but then the kid is. So there's that lack of understanding, and it is, I guess, the modern world. It's like go, school, swimming, next activity. Like, do you see that in your practice?
And it's interesting. I do. And it's interesting to see it both ways. So the non-highly sensitive parent raising a highly sensitive, that comes with a whole set of, things to figure out together. But equally, highly sensitive parent and highly sensitive child, equally challenging, because you're both, and it's that beautiful thing parents say, like, having children taught them so much about themselves. And I think this is a classic example. So for non-highly sensitive parents that have aren't able to be fatigued by social interaction and can go, don't need a lot of downtime maybe, or, aren't bothered by things like bright lights, big crowds, lots of talk. it can be frustrating, when you have a child that's a little more held back and needs time to process and to think through things. But again, it all comes down to understanding. Like when you understand what that experience is for your child, the classic one, I suppose, is giving kids the space and time they need to process things. So, for example, my little girl has started school this year, kindergarten. She's highly sensitive, without a doubt. And so for her, she needs time to process that. And she needs space, and there's almost an acceptance that it will take her a little longer to transition than other kids, but that's okay. She'll get there. Whereas I think if we don't understand that, we can be really quick to be like, oh, come on, off you go play. When in fact, what they need is scaffolding and support to do it in their time.
Yes, it's adjusting our expectations, really, isn't it? Yeah. And that's going to make everyone's day and life go much more smoothly.
Yeah, because as a parent, I'm almost saying, like, you can drop the rope. You could drop all these expectations or the need for them to do things in the same time span or sequence as their other peers, like, because they are their own little person with all of their sensitivities and, and that's totally fine. They will get there.
Yeah. Yeah, and really important not to be comparing them with other kids, those more high achieving kids that can do, 3 hours of gymnastics after school every day. Like a highly sensitive child is generally not going to do well in that kind of routine, are they?
Yeah, absolutely. And that is, you've highlighted there one of the key things. It's adjusting expectations for sure, but then also family rhythms and routines to suit the best we can, of course, the little one. But, even listening to myself say that, I do want to say that I think parents generally today put so much pressure on themselves to get it right all the time. You won't, and that's fine. That's fine. As long as you're just, figuring it out together as you go.
Yes, I love that. That's such an important message. Okay, and so overstimulation and overwhelm really common in highly sensitive kids. So what is like one or two strategies that parents can use to help their child when they are feeling that overwhelm and overstimulation sort of happening or coming on?
Yeah, absolutely. Good one to cover, I think. What I want to offer is a two-step approach. And if we take away anything from this chat today, I hope this might be it. So there's two steps. First of all, reduce input and then connect. Okay, so with highly sensitive kids, we know that one of the hallmarks of their experience in the world is that they process things so deeply, which kind of links to that feeling things so deeply and thinking about things. Like, these are the kids that will ask you the most deep and meaningful questions that'll rock your little socks as a parent. Think, oh, why is my 6-year-old thinking of things like this? But they go there. And so with that propensity to process things so deeply, they are more likely to get overstimulated. Things like sensory input, experiencing their emotions, social interactions. These are all things that are going to fill up that little cup, when you get to the point and then it like overflows, I guess, which would be the point of overwhelm. So we want to be looking for ways that we can empty the cup a little bit. And how we do that is by reducing inputs for them. So maybe it'd be helpful to think of like an example I'm sure most of us could relate to: a birthday party. They're loud, full of fun, but they are busy, noisy, chaotic, joyful places. And none of that is wrong or bad, but for our highly sensitives, it's going to feel like a lot. So if you've got a little one melting down at a party over pass the parcel, or even, the fact that they, I don't know, it could be a million things, it is really helpful in that moment to think the first thing you need to do is reduce input. So that might mean separating them from the group, not in a punishment way or a, sending them out kind of way, but just like, hey, I can see you're having a super hard time. Let's step out and get some fresh air together. Get them away from everyone else where it's quieter, calmer, maybe even dimmer as well. And at that point, we're going to be able to connect with them, say, I can see you're overwhelmed. This is a lot. And then we regulate together. But always the first things first, and that is reducing as much of the input as you can.
Yes, I love that. And I guess from that perspective, we're thinking about the senses, right? Like, how can we reduce, the input in all of those different areas? And I think parents probably have an inkling of the maybe the senses that can overwhelm their particular child. Like, is it more sound? Is it more light, that sort of thing. So yeah, I love that tip. And doing that before that connection piece, I think, is such a great practical tip for parents. So thank you for sharing that.
There's also, can I ask Jess too, just like a follow on from that, I think it's what's really helpful for us parents too, because, you know, when you're there in the heat of the moment and it's all going down or blowing up or however it happens with your little one, you know, we want to make it better for them. It's awful to watch our kids struggle, but we're also cognizant that everyone's watching too, right? And that stirs up a whole lot of stuff for us. So I just encourage parents to remember too that, like, you have a choice. You don't need to stick it out at the birthday party and be the last one standing. It's okay to say, oh, you know, this is feeling like a lot today. We're going to wish your friend happy birthday. It's time to go home, you know, or whatever it is that your child needs in that moment. It's okay, you know, to make that call.
Yes, that's such a good tip. And I think, you know, a lot of those really positive childhood experiences, the birthday parties, the fairs, the fates, they are really like rich sensory experiences where highly sensitive kids are maybe not going to do that well. So again, adjusting our expectations, you know, and knowing that they're probably going to be challenging times with our kids.
Yeah. I spoke to my mum. So I'm 41 now. And I spoke to my mum about a lot of this work I'm doing. And she goes, oh, yeah, come to think about it, cried every single birthday party we had. Because inevitably you'd want to have the party. You'd be so excited. Every party you'd cry. Yeah. I don't actually remember that as a child, but clearly there was something going on there for me with terms of overwhelm.
Yeah, definitely. It's funny and I think our parents just weren't as, you know, as aware of all of this stuff, were they? It was more of a, come on, get on with it, get in there.
Yeah, get in there, you're here to play, off you go. But she's like, yeah, anyway.
Yeah, thank goodness our parenting, you know, parenting has changed over the years a lot. And I think I'd much prefer to be a highly sensitive child now than when we were kids, because I just don't think it was recognized, was it?
No, you were the, you know, the like pesty one, or, oh, here she goes again. I can only imagine.
Stop making things difficult. This is supposed to be fun. Yeah,
exactly. Whereas now I think we have this understanding, but also empathy for what that feels like. And so it can be super healing, I think, for parents now to recognize this in their little ones, because it's almost like you get to be like, oh, that makes sense why I feel the way I do. And it's pretty healing.
Yeah, definitely. And so what about change and transition? Like, I remember I've got a 15 and a 17-year-old now, so they're much older, but I remember my daughter was an absolute nightmare to like leave anywhere when she little. So I would dread, you know, going to the friend's place because we'd have a great time while we were there. But the leaving was just, there was inevitably going to be a really big meltdown. Yeah. And so, you know, that's a trait that highly sensitive kids really have, isn't it? Like that just struggle with change and transition. So what can we do as parents to support our kids in those times?
I'm laughing about that because there was a mum in my mother's group who had a child that really hated leaving too. And so she'd do this ritual. She'd be like, okay, I'm going to say goodbye now because I'm about to surfboard carry them out of, you know. Yes. Like it's just every time you know what's coming. Okay, so yes, transitions are hard. Transitions are hard for all kids, you know, typically, but extra hard for our little highly sensitive people because of all the challenges they throw up. You know, changing gear when you're a little person is difficult. And so the best way we can support our kids through this is by being like a competent captain, I suppose, of the boat is a nice way to think of it, where you know this is going to be hard. So anticipate that, prepare yourself. Take a minute first to, you know, something I do is like a little affirmation for myself before I know that I'm going to have to make a request that's going to be hard. So I'll say, okay, here it comes, but I can handle it, something like that. And then support your little person by being really clear and consistent with how that looks, but also supportive. Being, you know, the captain doesn't mean we need to be brusque or, you know, authoritarian about it. We can be supportive and be like, you know, I see how hard this is. You are having so much fun, but in 10 minutes, we are going to go. So you've given a warning, you've supported them through that. And then I always like to follow on with something that is coming after. So they're able to be like, oh, it's so hard. But when I get in the car, we're going to put on the fun playlist and dance, or it's
I
ice
love
pop
that.
time, or whatever it is, age
Yeah.
appropriate. And that can be a beautiful support too, that there is life after the challenge.
Yeah, so having that something positive to look forward to. Is it worth talking to them prior? I mean, I guess it depends on their age, but I'm just thinking, is it worth, having these conversations prior to going somewhere where that kind of transition meltdown might happen, or is that not even helpful?
Oh, absolutely helpful. So we
Okay.
want to be having those conversations at times when they are regulated. And so we know with nervous system dysregulation, when we go into fight or flight or shutdown, there's no point having it then, right? The
No.
brain is not in a position that it can be rational and logical and, communicative. So we want to be having it while we're in a really regulated state. And that probably is when you're heading to the play date or the party or whatever. So it looks like something along the lines of, I know that this day is going to be amazing. You can't wait to see your cousins or ride the ride, whatever you're doing. And it's going to be hard to leave. It's going to be hard to leave for all of us. But we do need to get home for dinner or whatever, life. And so when it's time to go, I will give you a warning, and then we're going to have to pack up and leave after 10 minutes or, set up to suit your thing. So it is scaffolding them. I think that's actually a really kind thing to do for kids too, because then they can anticipate and it feels familiar. So I'm all for that suggestion, Jess. Love that.
Yeah. And then that 10-minute warning, I think, is super helpful. I know that used to help. For me, it didn't always, mean that the meltdown didn't happen, but it's still kind of that prep for them. And, like you were saying, you don't need to be the sort of, sergeant. You want that gentle approach, but I guess you still, want to be firm in holding that boundary as well.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We can be kind but firm. What often happens, because especially with explosive kids, and a lot of the kids I work with are explosive, they will have big, strong reactions to things, and things may fly, including little fists and hands and unkind words. But we do need to stick to the expectation we've set, because what will happen over time, and you need to kind of have faith as a parent, but it does happen over time, they will come to know, okay, when mum says 10 minutes, it's 10 minutes. And so resistance lowers, the whole thing gets easier. And before you know it, you'll be able to say, guys, 10 minutes till we go, and they'll be running to the car because they know it's inevitable.
Yes. And the downside of saying, okay, you can have another 10 minutes, or okay, we can stay a bit longer. That, the transition meltdown is still inevitable. We're just sort of holding it off, aren't we?
Delaying the inevitable. Yeah, exactly. It doesn't get better.
Yeah. All right. Some really good tips there. So all of this is a lot for parents to navigate as well. So I think it's important that we come back to, our own nervous system, because this can really stretch us, dealing with these kinds of things all day, every day. So what are your recommendations in terms of parents taking care of themselves and their nervous systems while supporting their highly sensitive kids?
I love that you've asked this, because I genuinely believe that this is 50%, if not, 75% of the equation, looking after ourselves so that we can be calm, regulated, and, feel good about our parenting. It is just so, so critical. So a few thoughts on it. I think, right when we first started talking, we talked about the fact that parenting highly sensitives is intense parenting some of the time, a lot of the time, depending. So when we don't prioritize this, inevitably it goes one way, and that's to stress, overwhelm, and even burnout, if we're doing this over a long time. So it's kind of a non-negotiable. What I suggest is that we look for opportunities to build in micro moments of regulation. While we'd all love to be able to head off for a yoga class or sit in for an hour and have a coffee before school pickup every day, or whatever it is, the reality is, like, I know 0 people that can do that every day forever. So while you do that when you can, whatever the big ticket items are, but when you can't, moments of micro regulation. So that might look like building yourself a 15-minute buffer to sit in the car before pickup, right? So you get to have your breaths, listen to a podcast or music. You're not pulling in, rushing in, grabbing bags and things and hauling everyone home. It might look like taking your lunch break, when you normally work through, but actually getting out, putting your face in the sun, calling a friend, whatever works to regulate you. And we're also different in that. Do those things, those little cumulative things will build up over time to an overall more regulated experience, I think.
Yes, I love that little micro things because, yeah, I mean, like you said, the big things are great. And if we can fit those in, that's fantastic. But most of us can't regularly. So, yeah, those little things that we can do. And I would just add, like, with that little 10 minutes in the car, just try and, stay off your phone. Yeah, listening to something, I think, is one thing. But I think, with the pool of screens and phones now, every little 5-10 minutes we're catching up on, I don't know, emails or paying bills or scrolling social media. And that really doesn't give us that regulation time, does it?
You're so right. It needs to be time, not another tick off a to do, but just purely something for regulation. So if that's sitting in silence for 15 minutes, oh, bliss, like do that. So yeah, but look for those moments and be really intentional about fitting them in, because I think we can all find a 5-minute window somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. And I really resonated with what you said about that, that really being 50 to 75% of the parenting picture. As I said, I'm in the teen years, the teen parenting years, and I'm finding it, super challenging. I mean, I'm not even going through any like major, like my kids are good kids, but it's just the general teenage stuff. And I find if I'm not looking after myself, I am not, like I'm responding maybe in ways that I am not proud of or regret later with, my teenagers. So I think that's a really important message for all parents, is like us looking after ourselves is a huge part of becoming a better parent and a more well-grounded and balanced parent.
Yeah, so right. So resonate with that.
Yeah, so thank you. You've shared some really good ideas and tips, and I'm sure those parents of highly sensitive kids out there got a lot out of this episode. So can you tell us a little bit more about what you offer, where people can find you online, and how you support parents and kids?
Yeah, I'd love to. So yeah, first of all, thank you again for having me. I could talk about this all day with you, so it's been really nice. Okay, few touch points, I suppose. I wrote a children's book called Billy's Brilliant Butterflies, which is a children's picture book specifically for those of us with highly sensitive kiddos. So that is available via my website, which is just my name, jacquiward.com.au. It's Jacqui with an E on the end. And then the main place I hang out online is Instagram. A lot of the time I'm over there talking about highly sensitives or child wellbeing, that kind of stuff. So I'd love to connect with you there, which is just at Jacqui_Ward_. And then, of course, I do work with families directly for those that are looking for more intensive support through my private practice work, which is at Flow State Space Psychology. You can find all the links for that via my website or Instagram.
Beautiful. And we'll make sure all of those links are in the podcast show notes as well. Do you only see clients like face-to-face, or do you do online client work as well?
Yeah. Yes, glad you asked. I should have thought of that. No, I'm face-to-face in Surrey Hills, Sydney, but I also offer telehealth Australia-wide.
Okay, amazing. Yeah, because I know our listeners are all over the place. So I think that's important to clarify. But yeah, I'll make sure all the links are in the show notes. And your children's book, I didn't even know about that. So that sounds fantastic. Oh, there it is.
There it is. So yeah, that was just published last year.
Oh, congratulations. That's such, and that obviously is for kids to understand, their sensitivity. Is that kind of the
that was the initial goal, I suppose, of it. But then since I've had teachers contact me and parents say, oh, this helped my non-sensitive child understand their sibling. And then I've had some beautiful mums contact me and say, oh, this was healing. It helped me understand myself. So I guess relevant for all of us.
Amazing. That's awesome. That sounds so good. Well, thank you so much for joining me. It's been so good to chat to you, Jacqui.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me, Jess.
Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. Head on over to our website, naturalsuperkids.com, for the show notes for this episode, as well as a whole heap of inspiration to help you raise healthy and happy kids. I'll see you next week.